Theranos services with the DoD at the end of the day. We did not, Elizabeth responded. But less clear were Elizabeth's recollections about whether she'd conveyed these facts to investors. Thus began a monumental round of he said, she says that stretched across all categories: military applications, financial projections, third-party machines. Elizabeth carefully disputing the testimony of many government witnesses who came before her. Am I right that your testimony is that you never told investors or potential investors in 2013 or 2014 that analyzers that Theranos manufactured were deployed in the battlefield? Asked Leach. I don't think I did, Elizabeth said. You never told investors or potential investors that? I don't think I did. Okay, and you wouldn't have told potential investors that because you knew it wasn't true. Yes, said Elizabeth. You did not tell Steve Bird, Safeway CEO, that Theranos had deployed its TSPU on the battlefield? Leach pressed. Correct, said Elizabeth. Leach then reminded the jury what Bird himself had said just weeks before, reading the Safeway CEO's testimony out loud to the court. Elizabeth told me that they had been doing some work for the Department of Defense, that her device was in medevac units around the world in places, a lot of Americans didn't know where we were. Leach then turned to Elizabeth. You heard him testify to that, correct? I did, she said. And what about all the investors? Lisa Peterson, Brian Grossman, Brian Tolbert, and Craig Lucas, who testified the same on the stand. Were they all misremembering too? Elizabeth said she didn't think she'd told them Theranos devices were used for clinical care on medevacs. Your testimony is that simply didn't happen. You would never tell an investor that? Leach asked. My testimony is that I don't think I said that, Elizabeth said. Remember, just a few weeks ago, the government had played an investor call for the court that seemed to dispute Elizabeth's answer.
The military is a big deal for us, and I can tell you confidentially a couple of the areas in which we've been focused there. One, in the context of work in the Middle East and specifically in Afghanistan, the ability to take a technology like this and put it in place, specifically on a medevac, has the potential to change survival rates. And we've also been doing a lot of work with special operations command in the context of missions in remote areas.
But under cross-examination, Elizabeth refused to budge. Here's Professor Kreitzberg.
Well, one thing that the government did do somewhat effectively in their cross-examination was be repetitive on particular issues that Elizabeth Holmes said, I never told them, for example, about the Department of Defense deployment. I don't remember telling anyone that. And the prosecutor went through Bird, Peterson, Grossman, Tolbert. He went through each of those witnesses and reminding Elizabeth Holmes, did you see them in court? Did you hear them testify? Which was really a way to say to the jurors, remember they were in court? I know it was a long time ago, but you heard them testify. And all of them heard this incorrectly. All of them said the same thing about the Department of Defense representations. So in order to believe Elizabeth Holmes, you have to disbelieve multiple very credible witnesses. And that's why at the end, when they go into the jury room, they can then be separated somewhat from the emotional tug of having seen her and listened to her testify.
In 1 mile, keep left to US 287 North.
Then pulls the evidence together.
Prosecutor Leach then moved to the technology. Elizabeth confirmed she was kept apprised of what all the devices could and could not do. Leach referenced an email from Dr. Daniel Young, the number 3 at Theranos, that Young had sent about a month after the company announced its Walgreens partnership. In it, Young told Elizabeth that their test results for sodium, potassium, and chloride were still not as reliable as he wanted. Another email from the same time period showed just 3 tests were actually being done on Theranos' own device. That wasn't hidden from you, said Leach.
Be in interrupt zone 2, left lane.
Yet again, Leach confirmed with Elizabeth that Theranos bought machines from third parties, including Siemens, Beckman Coulter, and DCA Vantage. Leach then brought up the financial projections Theranos provided to RDB, the DeVos family office, forecasting revenue
Continue on US 287.
supposedly due in part to robust pharma and hospital contracts. You had no revenue from pharmaceutical companies in 2014, correct? Leach asked. We did not, said Elizabeth. You never recognized any revenue from hospital services, correct? I'm not sure, Elizabeth said. And you never put a mini lab or an Edison in a hospital, correct? Not for clinical care, no, said Elizabeth. Leach then turned to Brian Grossman, whose fund PFM invested about $100 million in Theranos. Do you dispute that you and Mr. Belwani told Brian Grossman that Theranos did a little over $200 million in revenues, mostly from DoD, that had sustained Theranos prior to launch? I don't think